Pam, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
I am feeling fabulous here in Dallas, Texas.
Wow, that's great. So, let's get right into it. Let's start with an introduction. Pam, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? What's your story?
You're listening to The Accredited Life, hosted by Peter Neal. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show.
Besides looking like a ghost today, hi, just excited to be on your show. I am based here, like I mentioned, in Dallas, and started Goodwin Commercial back in 2006 after working corporate America on the landlord and tenant side. I worked on the tenant side with Brinker International, developing more than 50 chilies from the ground up. And
Nice.
that motivated me when I found out these landlords were making all this money on a 10-year ground lease with chilies. And I'm like, I have got to figure out, my hashtag is find a way, how they're doing this. And I found a mentor to help me get started in my own business. And that was back in 2006. And we have been doing that. We specialize in the single tenant net lease assets. We either buy land and develop with national tenants, or we'll buy an existing building and then redevelop the property. So we pretty much have been doing that. And I've been in some format for 35 plus years now. And I'm, still waking up on Monday, loving my job. So that's a good sign.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a topic that I absolutely love. I'm a commercial broker and hang my license at a commercial shop locally. And one of my brokers in the past was obsessed with those types of triple net. We have a lot of Wawa's our way, and Chick-fil-A's and Walgreens, dollar stores. I mean, you name it. KFC's, Taco Bell's, Panda Express. So that I love that aspect of the business. What was it, just by chance that's what you were doing from a brokerage perspective, and or what is your career? What was the evolution of that side of your career?
I know I have a degree from the University of Nebraska, which Cornhuskers are my favorite team, and have the interior design, wanted to be a hotel interior designer.
Nice.
And I ended up not taking the position with JW Marriott. Now I just love staying in nice hotels. But I started just large shopping center development on the tenant construction side, and then I've done some leasing, which gave me a really good overall background. But it was really working with Brinker, developing those projects that I found. What really gave me the most excitement was when I would go meet with one of these small towns, maybe 10,000 people, for a new Chili's, and they would roll out the red carpet to have a sit-down restaurant versus all the fast food. And even that's my main goal now, really, is working in these smaller towns, doing development, bringing new concepts to their communities.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, that's got to be satisfying, right? It's just it's a very unique part of the business, very different than tenants and toilets and that kind of thing. But to bring something to town that they want, and that they're going to enjoy for years to come, like, that's very satisfying, right? Talk to me. Is it like a preferred development type of relationship with the who do you work with now? Are you still working with Chili's, or has that evolved into other spaces, or what does that look like?
In the last almost 20 years of business now, before the partner I teamed up with right after leaving Brinker, we were a preferred developer for Walgreens, and we were doing those here in Texas. And now I don't run with any specific tenants. I probably more find the land or find the building. Another business partner and we just acquired a Regions Bank in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
And now we're actually going to, cross fingers, flip it to a credit union who we now have it under contract with. And then we also have land. As you know, in this business, commercial real estate, it's really about relationships. And I had a good relationship with the economic development director in a small town here. And I don't know if a lot of people know it, but a lot of these cities own a lot of their commercial property and want developers to help them bring tenants to their town or city. And so we actually have 6 acres under contract that we're talking to, a variety of tenants on that. So I do represent tenants, but most of the time I'm out there hustling or looking for bird dogs to help me find properties that we can team up together.
Gotcha. Talk to me about the preferred development. What is it, the relationship, for somebody that doesn't, first time they're hearing that, let's just explain that from a basic perspective.
So some of the tenants, they have preferred developers that they, can really trust to go with. So when we were doing the Walgreens deals, one of the partners had a really good relationship with Walgreens. And what that really means is when you're doing a build to suit, so you're actually finding the land for them, and then we'll build the building for them, except for most of the interior, as far as their FF&E, and then you turn it over to them and then charge a rent. So, for example, we did that in Tyler, Texas, and we probably did that deal 20 years ago, and I can still remember the rent, $493,500 that Walgreens was paying us. That's annually for that property. So if the tenant doesn't build the building themselves, they are looking for people that know what they're doing, can get it done. And it's really easy for them, especially even when I was working for Chili's right before I left, they were opening up, 150 locations a year, which is a lot.
Yeah. Wow. It's important for the listener to understand when you're working with those types of tenants, they have criteria that when you drive past Chili's, they always look the same, right? And Walgreens, they always look the same. And the preferred developer knows all those things and how that operates and the specs and everything else. So, wow, there's you mentioned your kind of process is finding the land first. That's correct. So that's kind of where it begins for you, is looking for good locations that'll fit, that you'll be able to turn into, kind of redevelop into something else. Is that correct?
Correct. We've done a variety from land to redevelopment, from actually even buying an existing tenant in the building, knowing that they're going to possibly be moving out in a couple of years, and the rent was low when they started, and that's called value add.
Yeah.
And then if that tenant doesn't renew, then to find a different tenant to replace them for higher rent. And, this business is buying high, which kind of sounds opposite, but buying high and then selling low.
Wow. So how do you work with the existing owners? Do you typically going in and you want to purchase the property? So you're getting it under contract, and then while it's under contract, or you're going out to see who you can get, that's going to fit that space. And I'm assuming maybe every now and again, if you got a really good location, you'll close on it, kind of knowing you have to, and you're going to find something. But is that usually how the process works? And is there any other way that you work with existing owners from like a JV or a partnership perspective, or?
Right, exactly how you described it. We put the property under contract, and sometimes we have, knowing the tenant wants to go there, so we're going after that land. Sometimes I just know, it's a really good hard corner. We had an existing, I have been looking at property. Sometimes it takes 5 to 10 years to finally get it. But my motto is everything is for sale. It's just a matter of time and price. And I think that one felt like a good, I don't even know, 5-6 years to finally get it under contract. And we didn't have a tenant at that one, but just letting the seller know that, you do have interested tenants. And then that one, we actually had about 4 interested national tenants, and we ended up going with Mattress Firm. So that was a good deal, but it's kind of all over the board. Just the one we closed last July is the first building that I had ever closed on without not having a tenant all ready to go. So it's a lot more nerve-wracking not having the tenant in there. Sure. Because, you're paying all those expenses, every month for taxes and insurance and maintenance. And
Yeah.
had a pipe burst and, all this stuff I'm not used to. I'm used to having a tenant move in, within a month or two. But now that we have it under contract, we're like, okay, tenant, let's go.
Mhm. And so, okay, so you get it under contract. Ideally, you have somebody in mind already, or there's a few people, and then from there, are you looking at the pricing versus you developing it yourself versus what they would develop it for, and how much lease they'll provide, or is there times when you say to them, you develop the building and we'll just do the ground lease, because maybe it makes more sense, or what does that part look like?
Our number one goal is, as the money is in taking the risk on developing the property
Sure.
yourself. We're doing more build-to-suits back in the days, but right now we're really just focused on doing a ground lease just because of the expense of construction and then unknowns, and doing your pro forma can change from 6 months to a year on construction cost.
Yeah.
And so right now we're just preferring to do ground lease or flipping the land, or we've also we had property under contract and then we just sold the land, to Discount Tires. Some of the tenants will only purchase, so then we just sold the land directly to them.
Gotcha. So in those cases, the tenant is building the property and you're just essentially doing the ground lease and, like you said, collecting the rent from there.
Right. That's our preference right now. You don't get the tax benefits of the tax, when you own the building, the tax depreciation on it. If you do a ground lease, the tenant will get that tax depreciation. But I find it to be, less risk right now as a developer until if the construction costs do come back down to, where your numbers are going to make it work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then from there, is this a buy and hold play where you want to continue to own these in perpetuity, or is there get to be a point where you want to sell, and when is that?
I know. If looking back, if you're like, Pam, what would you do differently? I would be like, oh my gosh, I wish I today had all of those properties that we sold, in the past, but people came along and offered us, crazy cap rates that we couldn't refuse. So we ended up selling, but I would buy and hold and then pass those off to our two sons. So I'm, doing redevelopment now for hold plays.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any asset class in the real estate world, at least, that's better than holding those quality triple net, single tenant deals where it's a good location, it's a good tenant. Would you agree with that? I'm sure you would. Would you? And let's talk about that. Just so the listener understands. Because it's just like that's one of those things where you can't beat that. Talk to me about that. What's your thought? What's your take?
Like you mentioned, I've just really focused on the single tenant, which is your, McDonald's that have been there forever, and your Starbucks type tenants, your banks, even 7-Eleven is booming. I mean, McDonald's, you can go on their website, I don't know if most people know this, but McDonald's is one of the largest real estate companies in the world. They're actually a real estate company and they're flipping burgers just to pay the rent. They're worth more than $40 billion in real estate. And so those triple net assets, are very popular, especially for investors. That's just one tenant. Most of them stay there. If it's a good location, like you mentioned, they can be there for 5, 10, 50 years or more. And so they're very attractive to most investors that are, fairly safe return.
How do you look at the tenants? Or do you primarily want to work with corporate, with franchises? Do you want to see a certain amount of the franchisee? Do you want to see them own a certain amount? What does that look like?
It really comes down to, what their financial is worth and then what they're selling at a cap rate. Because let's just say I have 1 acre of property and I lease it to McDonald's. I just saw one selling on a 3.75 cap rate, and that was $4 million that McDonald was selling at. And not to knock Dollar General, but they're selling at 7.5 cap or almost double.
Sure.
And so you could have that same piece of land, two different tenants in a Dollar General, and you're going to make under 2 million. And so the cap rate, we really, really study the different cap rates and tenants of, what they're selling for, and they change all the time. You have to really be on top of it. You'll see the closings of a variety of store, which are good opportunities for development.
Yeah, that's during COVID, some of those cap rates really compressed, right? There was, at least around here, like there was this, I think Wawa's, Chick-fil-A's going at like high twos. It's just like just absolutely insane prices. People, I guess, just had money that they needed to get rid of, get it on the street, but unbelievable, right? So you got to constantly be watching that.
Right. We're always watching to see what's happening with the tenants or, I have several tenants. We sell investment properties to other people and alerting them if I see any red flags or radar of, hey, you may want to be selling this soon if they're, looks like there's some activity in the news of what's happening with them. But tenants are always evolving. A lot of the fast food people have been there, but there's always more coming on. You asked about franchisees. There's some really, really good ones. We're, like I said, based here in Dallas, and there's some new developments that, we're getting. I mean, we have Portillo's from Chicago, and it's nice to have a lot of these first-time concepts. I worked on Rockin' Bros with the local franchisee and the two guys from KISS, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley.
Cool.
And it's nice to work with some of those tenants who are coming to the market, since we have a lot of people coming from, Florida and Michigan and Chicago, and then they like to bring their restaurant concepts here.
Yeah. That's a really good point, and something maybe a little bit different than that you're going to see in residential, but watching the news and the credit ratings and things like that of these tenants, because like you said, it evolves. I remember back in the day, it was Rite Aid was really having problems. They still are. And we were calling different people that own Rite Aids, and there were some families where they had that was the main source of income, was that Rite Aid. It was bringing in $400,000 a year, that kind of thing. And I think this person lucked out. I think they have like the only Rite Aid in that part of town that is stuck around, whereas a lot of them have closed. They kind of had a big anchor, like a nice store and a good location. And that's the way they looked at it too, was, even if it goes under, I got a good location, we'll be able to find something else. Where do you see the opportunity in the space right now? There's a lot of those drugstores like Rite Aid and CVS and Walgreens that you hear are closing, but then you hear they're opening up other stores as well and all. Is there anything particular, what excites you from an opportunity perspective, other than what you were just saying about, some of these new players coming into the space from out of state and that kind of thing?
We're seeing a lot of entertainment venues and restaurant concepts coming to our area. We have, like I mentioned, a lot of the first and a big 400-acre development done by Warren Buffett. Now I'm from Nebraska, and we had Nebraska Furniture Mart come to the colony about 10 minutes away from our house. And that's a 400-acre development. So to see like Fritz's Adventure just open up today with more than 100,000 square feet. And then that's where the Portillo's went, the Rockin' Brews and Andretti's and Pop Stroke, Tiger Woods concept, Cosm, a lot of these great new concepts are coming here, which I find, get a lot of good ideas on social media when people are posting them, to find out who we can bring, to your local community.
Wow, that's amazing. I would think too, I've always heard commercials on television. Like sometimes you'll see commercials on TV for a place that there's none of them around you whatsoever. And that's the reason why they're doing that. It's for commercial brokers, people like yourself and all that. They want to come to town and they need to get the word out so that they can find a place to come in. Is that true, or is that just just some crazy theory that somebody told me along the way?
I like that idea. I'm gonna have to start.
It's
There's always
when
such
you
good
watch
ways to
TV.
get leads.
Yeah,
Do what?
exactly. Watch TV that way, and you think I've never driven by. One around here is Marcos, as a pizza
Oh yeah.
place, and it's just like there's none anywhere close at all. I mean, just miles and miles, 75 miles, 100 miles away. But I'm assuming they want to be in town, if that's what they're doing. So that could be a lead, right? I mean, it's just how you look at things. I love what you're saying about social media there and just getting ideas from that. So how is the business evolved over the years? With everything going on with COVID and stuff like that, is there anything you'd stay away from, or you mentioned what you kind of gravitating towards now, but is there anything that you've kind of put on the back burner, or what's that look like?
And I do feel a commercial real estate. I would say 2024 was a really rough year for a lot of people on the brokerage. Some had a great year, but the majority of the people I talked to, it was one of the worst years for a lot of people. The interest rates still have a really big impact on commercial real estate. So as you know, like you mentioned, 2% cap rates or 4% cap rates, and interest rates are still 7-8%.
Yeah.
Those numbers don't work very well.
Don't add up, yeah.
A lot of almost all of the closings I've had are cash buyers.
Yeah.
And I've had maybe one loan person since COVID take out a loan. So a lot of these people are pooling, as well as with accredited investors, pooling their money together to buy some of these office buildings that are now being converted into senior living, which they're like 55 and up. And I'm thinking senior living's like 85 and up.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
People are just being really innovative with that. And some of these department stores and even some of these big boxes around here are turning into a lot of pickleball courts.
Oh my gosh, sure. Yeah.
So we in retail are very resilient, and we will find a way and never give up on finding different ways to make things work. We can recycle, redevelop, redo.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Yeah, that's a really really good point there. And talk to me about like geographical location wise. I mean, do you have kind of a buy box? Do you have a territory that you want to be in, or is there a few different states? And it's something you mentioned earlier with kind of going into those small towns to bring certain concepts and things like that they might not be used to. I thought that was an interesting concept. What does that part of the business look like?
Well, I've always felt just Metroplex, Dallas. I can drive, and I used to say I could drive an hour away and be in a small town. Now I'm like driving an hour away and I'm still in the Dallas Metroplex. So now I have to go almost an hour and a half and take a radius of some of these markets that are really growing. But I find a lot of, really good opportunities if you just keep, going out now. We mentioned I did buy that property in Birmingham.
Yeah.
But
Actually made me think that.
I learned in the last, since July, since we purchased it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am staying in Texas, because you just find out all kinds of stuff that states do differently.
Sure.
And I'm just like, we make it really, really, we're like pro development here, which they're pro development too. But it just, when you start finding out things that you need on your property or building, or they want to charge you taxes on your lease amount. If you lease the building, they want you to pay taxes on that. I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't do that kind of stuff here. Just finding out all the different ways they're done. So right now I'm geographically staying in Texas for the development. I do help brokerage people, in different areas. I had a fun client, if you know Captain Sandy from Below Deck Mediterranean.
No.
She's on the TV show. So I had just reached out to her how to be a guest on Below Deck Mediterranean, the TV show. And we just started talking about how to become a guest. The next thing she told me she wants to buy a property in Florida. So I helped her buy 1900 firehouse building in downtown Jacksonville. So I do work all over, but my market knowledge is really here based in the Metroplex or throughout Texas.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you hit at what I was the kind of my follow-up question was the zoning. Anytime you're involved in development, and you get it out of different, places and things like that, like you said, they're going to have all different rules and regulations, and it's just going to add into potentially your cost and your time frame and all that kind of stuff. So that makes sense, definitely. How do you work with investors? So what kind of offerings do you have? I mean, I don't know if you have a fund or you syndicate deals or partnerships or if you teach or what. I mean, how do you work with investors?
So I do teach a lot. I teach all over the country. I'm actually teaching a class tomorrow on how to find your first real estate investment property. But I mainly team up with people. I actually offer, people out there, if they are to find, really good land, or if they own land, or if they own a building or see a building that may be vacant, I offer them a minimum of 25% return, and we partner on the deal, and I'll help with all the due diligence and putting it under contract. I just need people out there finding available properties to work with if it's the right deal.
So what does that criteria look like for somebody who'd be interested in that? I'm assuming it's retail. I'm assuming it's got to be a good location, all that kind of stuff. But you tell me.
It's, for example, back to Birmingham, that's just a vacant Regions Bank that was available for sale. Looking at something like that, anything that's in a main area that just needs to be redeveloped. If it's one off from a corner, you just have to, most people know where the Starbucks is, the Chick-fil-A, some of those national tenants, and may see something that, or just tenant, vacant lot, tenant, and that vacant lot may be available, taking that location and then just redeveloping it would be good in the criteria. We usually, look at 1 to 5 acres a parcel, not too big, or just an existing building for redevelopment.
Wow. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. A topic that I absolutely love and would like to get more involved in, because as we said, I think from a retirement perspective, from a cash flow perspective, I don't think you could do much better. And I love the development perspective of it too. But, what would you say maybe some of the differences are between acquiring existing ground leases and triple nets versus the development side of it?
It's kind of buying at wholesale versus, can be retail.
Yeah.
And so if you are buying existing, it's kind of more at the retail price, but we have been able to, buy some at good prices, at good cap rates at the time. But it's, you just have to kind of look at weighing different things of, getting a new tenant in that location and what type of return you can get on that piece of property.
Yeah, I like what you said too, where there's the deals that maybe something makes sense now, but you have this future vision lined up, that could maybe have like the value add kind of concept that you mentioned before. So a lot of different ways you can do it. Well, Pam, this has been an amazing conversation. I love this topic. I could talk to you all day. For people that want to get involved and get, on some of your education stuff and things like that, how can they do that?
Definitely reach out, follow me on LinkedIn under just Pamela Goodwin. I'm always posting on that and different classes and projects that we have. And then just go to my website, pamgoodwin.com. Has, a lot of information on that, and feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, Pam, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. Look forward. Let's collaborate on a deal.
I love it.